We have always known that it was important to create vibrant cities with healthy communities where all people could live happily. In the COVID crisis, what we have seen with the recent murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, and the protests that are erupting in cities nationwide, let's not forget also climate crisis that we're facing, that this conversation is more important than ever. The need for healthier lifestyles, individually and collectively, is also most important. Vibrant and healthy cities also means safe spaces where our families can thrive. We now have an opportunity to create cities for all, radically different from what we've done in the past. But to do this, we need to develop a shared vision of how we want to live. So I'm so thrilled to be joining Gil Peñalosa to discuss how we can use the pandemic crisis and the post-pandemic transition period to create cities that work for all people, regardless of age, gender, social, economic, and ethnic background. Gil is the founder and the chair of an internationally recognized Canadian nonprofit. It's called the 880 Cities. He's also the first ambassador of World Urban Parks. After this session, there will also be a workshop follow-up with Gil and David Puente titled Once in a Lifetime Opportunity to Heal Our Cities, where we can continue the conversation. I'm so incredibly thankful to our board chair, Mary Skelton Roberts, and the Bar Foundation for making this happen. Gil is an old friend, and it's just so wonderful to have him here. We'll probably have him again last year because he's a fan favorite of our audience. So with no further ado, Gil, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Oh, half of the homes that will be around in 40 years do not exist today. So today we have about 3.5 billion people living in cities. Within the lifetime of our children, we're going to go to 7 billion. And it depends how do we want to live. It could be very nice and civilized where people walk and bike and take public transit. The US is going to grow by around 100 million people. We're going to have to do about 40 million homes in the US. What a wonderful opportunity and huge responsibility, because whatever we do or don't do is where millions of people are going to live. So if this is going to happen in the next 40 years, let's think, what have we done in the last 40? Well, in the last 40, we've been focusing on cars, and not on people's happiness. And this is how we've been trying to solve mobility. And even spending billions and billions, we haven't even solved mobility. This is how we've been doing neighborhoods. There are no trees, there are no parks. Instead of parks, we've been doing parking lots. Imagine a little child, an elder person, a person with disabilities. This is how we've been doing cities all over the world, Latin America and everywhere, segregating the poor people, sending the poor people to the worst places where there are no jobs, no education, no real possibility. This is 3 US cities, but it's similar in all of them by zip code. The dark red, the life expectancy is around 60. The light pink is 90. How can we even accept as normal that just by factor of luck, if you are born in one neighborhood, your life expectancy is going to be 60, 10 minutes away, it's going to be 90. And so the last 40 years, with very rare exceptions, have been mediocre or horrible, how we've been doing cities. We need to improve the cities that we have today, but we also need to create great cities for many, many people. We need to do it radically different. It doesn't matter if the city is 2,000 people or 5 million people. The issues are very similar. We got public health crisis, physical, mental, emotional. We got population growth. We are living longer, much longer. We got climate change. We see the symptoms everywhere. Even if some people don't want to believe, climate change is the biggest issue that we are going to face. So, nuestro momento, nuestro poder. The time is now. The power is ours. It could not come at a better time. On top of it, after planning this summit, COVID-19 came on board. And now we are having huge unrest all over the US with George Floyd. He was killed and everybody's feeling hurt, everybody's feeling sad and angry and upset that this should not happen. And this also has to do about the cities. I think that this is a symptom of what is happening, a symptom of something much bigger that we need to tackle and we need to solve. Let me give neighborhoods. if this is the city where we are born, imagine the probability if you are born in this neighborhood or if you are born in these neighborhoods. Think of the probabilities if you are born in the neighborhoods where the life expectancy is 60, where there are gangs, there are no lights, there's no parks, there's food deserts, there's not even a place to buy groceries, even if you wanted to. There are 4 times more convenience stores. Say, odds are totally against you. This is in the wealthiest country in the world, this is the homeless people in Las Vegas. How can we have this as living conditions during COVID-19 for the homeless? So COVID-19 has shown a lot of inequalities, a lot of things that we need to fix. Also, it has shown that the environment, how we were deteriorating the quality of life, the quality of the air that we breathe. With just a few weeks of fewer cars, and all of a sudden the views are totally different. So the post-COVID-19, we need to work on it. It has to be equitable. It has to be sustainable. And that is the challenge that all of us have. Because even much bigger than COVID-19 is going to be climate change. And if we're not more equitable and more sustainable, it's going to be impossible to deal with it. So Nuestro Momento, Nuestro Poder is clearly critical for this. We need to organize like a movement of citizens alive where everybody is going to live healthier and happier. And that's what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about health. I'm going to talk about happiness, about equity. From the point of view of health, let's analyze health. The definition of health is that it is a state of mental, of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It's not just the absence of disease or infirmity. Happiness, when we talk about happiness, we need to talk about sustainable happiness. And sustainable happiness is the happiness that contributes to the individual, the community, or the global well-being, as long as it does not exploit other people or the future generations or the environment. We need to think about equity. Equity is giving everyone what they need to be successful. It's very different to equality that is giving everybody the same. Equity is about fairness. Someone did this cartoon that made it really interesting. You know, this is what we are talking about, equality. No, some people are starting so far behind that some might need 2 or 3 boxes while others might not need any box. And someone said, if that is equality and that is equity, maybe this is reality. This is the kind of thing that we need to solve. When we talk about equity and equality, it's very clear that we must solve the issues of equity before we can even talk about equality. So the post-COVID-19, we are facing 3 periods. The crisis, which is now and a few more weeks, maybe a few months, and then it's going to be the transition, and then it's going to be the post-COVID. But if we don't change now during the crisis and in the transition, we're not going to have a very good post-COVID. We need to change. Why don't we change? Because change is hard. Doing more of the same is a lot easier. I mean, change is not unanimous. Change, we got to have general interest must prevail over the particular interest. And we got to keep in mind, and decision makers, the cost of doing nothing is not nothing. We need to act. We have a window of opportunity, a huge opportunity and a huge responsibility to do it right. Some people are saying, oh, well, this one runs on money and makes you fat. This one runs on fat and saves you money. So we are going to turn all the roads into trees and bikeways and sidewalks. No, it's not so simple. There's a lot of other people that want the other way around. They say, oh, no, with this COVID crisis, I want my car, I don't want people, I don't want public transit. So it's gonna be, this might get a lot worse if we don't act. That's why this is a critical moment for everybody to act, to have clarity on how do we wanna live. I mean, when we evaluate cities, we should evaluate is how do we treat the most vulnerable citizens? And who are the most vulnerable? By age, of course, it's children and the elderly, but also is the people that are poor. It's also the people that have disabilities. It's also the people from racial minorities, from ethnic minorities. It's also the women. It's all of these are vulnerable people. I mean, it's not about creating a Disney World for the wealthy and healthy 20 to 60-year-olds. It's about everybody. It's about the vulnerable, and we say, okay, the Hispanic, the Latinos, where do they fit in all of this? Actually, there are Hispanics in all of these categories: children and elder and disabilities and blacks and poor and ethnics. And when we talked, so when I said we are going to create equitable and sustainable, I'm going to mention these 5 examples in the last 10 minutes, 2 minutes each. One is, I've been very lucky to have founded 880 cities and work in more than 350 different cities. And everywhere people ask me, Gil, what's 880 cities? Well, 880 cities is not really about walking or cycling or parks or streets. Those are the means, not the end. The end is, how can we have successful communities where people are going to live healthier and where people are going to be happier? Let's think for a minute. What if everything that we did in our community, the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the school, the library, everything had to be great for an 8 and an 80-year-old, not 8 to 80, 8 and 80 as an indicator species. Well, if it's great for the 8 and the 80, it's going to be great for all, from 0 to over 100. We need to stop building cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic, and we need to create great cities for all. That is the concept of 880 cities. Also, I want to mention an equalizer. Before immigrating to Canada, I lived in Bogota, in Colombia, and I was in charge of Ciclovia, that in America we call it open streets. I found a small program of a few miles and a few thousand people, and we turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. It's fantastic. We open streets to people, we close into cars, and the magic happens. Young and old and rich and poor. We went to 75 miles. All of these colors are by income level, And when I began, this is the upper, as you see, the purple is the upper income. That's the only open streets that existed in the city. And within 4 years, we had turned that little into 75 miles, covering the whole city, especially the poorest people, the income, to connecting the wealthiest and the poorest, connecting all areas of the city, and young and old and rich and poor. And if you don't want to walk or bike along the route, we do aerobics or Tai Chi or Cha-Cha-Cha, but everything's about physical activity. And this is great. 1 out of 4 people come out every Sunday of the year. Why is this good? Because it changes minds. It reminds people that the streets are public space. When we look at any city in America, from the air, we see that about 30% of the area are streets, and the streets are public spaces. So it's magical how they turn, because it's also about social integration. Whether it's in Delhi or it's in Paris, it's about social integration. We meet each other as equals. That is what is most important, that in any city, anywhere of any size, they can and they should do it. Now over 300 cities are doing it. We see LA is doing it, we see New York is doing it, we see Portland, we see many cities, Tucson and San Jose and Atlanta, but these cities are doing it almost like an event. And this cannot be an event. This is not the 4th of July. This is not 2 or 3 or 4 Sundays a year. We need to do it citywide so that we connect the rich and the poor and all ethnicities and all races, and we need to do it weekly. This is the magic of this, is how can we meet each other as equals? The rich people and the poor people don't live in the same buildings. Their children don't go to the same schools. They don't even go to the same restaurants. We need to shake this up and meet as equals somewhere. The CEOs of the corporations and their minimum wage workers with their families. Also, we need to move on sustainable mobility. I'm talking about walking, riding bicycles, using public transit. For example, we need walking and cycling. We gotta make it safe and enjoyable. This could be any US city, any time of the year. Let's keep in mind, in the US, more than half of the trips are less than 3 miles. They could, if it was safe, it could easily be done walking or cycling. More than half of the trips. Walking and cycling is the only mobility for most people. It's the only mobility for all children and youth. So having it safe and enjoyable should be almost like a human right. Unless you think that only the people that have a car and the age to drive and the money have the right to sustainable mobility. That's what we're talking about: democracy, human rights, and sustainability. Walking. I mean, everybody walks. Every single trip begins and ends by walking. Just like the birds fly or the deer runs, people, we walk. We walk. And we need to make it nice and safe. safe, and today is not safe. This is from the New York Times last month. Pedestrian deaths in the US in 2019 was the highest in 30 years. We need to improve walking. We need to make it safe. We gotta make it a priority, and we don't do it when we put all of these barriers or allow cars on the sidewalks or don't even do sidewalks. We're telling this woman every day, you are a second-class citizen when we do this. If we're going to improve walkability, we need to lower the speed. It's not a technical thing. We know what needs to be done. We know that we need to lower the speed. We need to know that we need to create barriers. We know if we have a small island in the crosswalk, we eliminate more than half of the incidents. It's not a technical thing. This doesn't cost money. It's not financial. It's political, and that's why all citizens must participate. And we also can ride bicycles. This could be people in LA going to school. I mean, any city in the US could be as good as Copenhagen. Copenhagen is cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, it rains all year round, and nevertheless, 41 out of 100 trips are done on bicycle. And now they want to go to 50%. So this could easily be done. This could easily be any city in the US. And now we're facing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Probably since the oil crisis on the 1970s, when in the 1970s, people could not even get their cars out the 7 days of the week. It was odd or even license plates. Now it's the same, because between 50 and 80% of the cars are out. And people, millions of people, essential workers, need to go to work. As the cities open up, more and more people are a little bit scared of public transit. So it's a time to do, for example, networks of protected bikeways. It's simple. Just put on the lines, put on the barriers, and make it a self-protected. This is in Berlin, and we see it in London. We see Dublin. Any city in the US could do it, but it's not about doing one. This is Tirana in Albania also. It's not about doing one. We need a network. We need to connect origins and destinations. This is Paris. Any city in the US, in Mexico, in Latin America, anywhere they could be doing what Paris is doing, but all of these cities, and now Paris has people on the streets walking, and this is Auckland, New Zealand, and also wonderful Auckland, California. In 24 hours, the mayor of Auckland said we're gonna have slow streets where you don't have any through traffic. Only the local cars can go in. And she did 72 miles overnight. You know, in Thailand, the markets were indoors, they brought it out. This is a different way to use the streets. We gotta open up our minds. Public transit, of course. Public transit is very, very important. And we need to see how to use public transit. Our essential workers. Maybe we gotta have everybody using masks, and maybe silence, because when people talk is when it's contagious. We gotta work on this, and we need to make it fast, such as also it's a time to create dedicated lanes for public transit. Rapid transit is not if the wheels are rubber or metal, it's if it has those dedicated lanes. And the priority, we know walking, cycling, and transit takes a lot fewer space. And parks, we have a big problem. No park. Over 100 million people in the US do not have a park within walking distance. Urgently, we need to make them. We need to make small parks from big parks. We need active and passive and contemplative. For example, San Francisco, in overnight, the mayor said 9 golf courses are going to be public parks. And she made so that people can walk. So instead of 72 people playing golf, now there's thousands of people walking and cycling and doing exercise. And the biggest problem of parks is management, is not maintenance. So we gotta work on the uses and the activities. Also, when we know that there are fewer people of Black people and Latins and Hispanics coming to the parks, we need to focus on those uses and activities to make sure that we invite. It's not only about just the infrastructure. We gotta ask the citizens, what do they want? So it's about those uses and those activities that we are gonna be able to get people out into the parks. It's about the programming. It's not about just doing the walking path, it's organizing the walking groups. And that is how we are gonna be able to, let's keep in mind, empty parks have very, very few benefits. So we gotta get the people out, and we need to think about what I mentioned at the beginning, the most vulnerable people. This is equitable and sustainable. It's about the benefits. This is not about streets. This is not about mobility. This is not about parks. It's about a post-COVID that is equitable and sustainable. And it's going to be good for so many things. Culture, education, for example, for health. is this the way things look? You know, the issue of obesity has a huge problem because other than the elderly, for example, in COVID, the biggest common denominator was obesity, of people dying. We need to become healthier. And the US has a big problem. 42% obesity, and the Hispanics and the Blacks even higher. So we need to work on the well-being. What is the well-being? Well, it's being well. We need to come out with healthier lifestyles, and all of the philanthropy, we got to work on that, on healthier lifestyle of everybody. We need to improve the school lunches, have farmers markets. We got to have urban gardening everywhere, in the schools, in the libraries. We need to be active. If we're active, we're going to have less premature deaths and strokes and osteoporosis. It's only 30 minutes a day, and we're going to be 5 or more days a week. So there's an urgency to be physically active. People think of the magic pill. There is no magic pill. The only way that the US people are going to be active is if we walk or bike as a normal part of everyday life. And there is no health without mental health. And mental health in this isolation is getting worse. A green neighborhood is going to lower the depression, the anxiety. So that's why we're going to have nature everywhere, at home, on the street, in the school, in the parks. So I just want to end by saying we need to create broad alliances. Nuestro Momento is now. We need alliances with the schools and the retail and the groups and the community. The time is now. The power is ours. Let's get the public sector and the private and the non-profit and the communities together. We need to have that sense of urgency. If not now, when? If not us, who? So the post-COVID is going to be equitable and sustainable, and we're going to be tackle bigger challenges, and we got to work together so that everybody will be able to live healthier and happier. So this conference is right on time to get inspired and then to go out and act. So Hispanics and everyone, let's do it now. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Gil.